Hello, hello. We are back talking about our industrial farms and ranches and fisheries. And we've gone over a couple topics that are important in understanding what these types of operations are. This fits in when we're talking about where food comes from, not where you get your food, where we get our food from the markets, all different kinds of topics like that we're going to get into next. But here we're talking about where food actually comes from. First, it comes from nature, from the wild. Second, it comes from growing your own, farming, whether that's farming your own backyard or local small to medium sized farms in your area. And third, large industrial farms, ranches, and fisheries. So we've gone over some of the egg operations that are large egg and chicken operations. We've gone over wild caught fish versus farmed fish, and now I want to just give you a little bit of a glimpse into beef, into cattle and meat on a large scale. In the United States, we have huge feedlots, huge operations that produce hundreds and hundreds of thousands of cows every year just to provide enough meat to service the fast food industries. That's a big one. When we talked about fast food in one of the last sections, the rise of McDonald's in the 1930s really changed the cattle industry, and it required so many more cattle to be raised for meat. So anyways, I wanted to just give you a quick overview of meat. In the same way we looked at fish and in the same way we looked at chickens, we're going to look at beef here. So in the United States, there is a government agency called the United States Department of Agriculture, and they label meats. And three of the most common labels you'll see are the ones you see here on this slide. So prime, choice, and select. Now, all of those sound fine, and they don't really give us an idea of what they are. So I wanted to give you your first glimpse into what those are. So when you see them at the grocery store, you'll see a little sticker on most of the meat you'll buy at the supermarket labeled by one of these with one of these labels: prime, choice, or select. Now, the United States Department of Agriculture has responsibility to regulate how cows are raised and how the food is raised. We go into that in more detail later, but for right now, I want you to just understand the different meat grades that are out there. Just like we learned about the difference between farmed fish and fresh or wild fish, and we learned the difference between all the different eggs and the different ways that they label eggs, from pasture raised, organic, free range, cage free, all of that. Here, we're going to do the same thing, but with beef. So, first, let's start at number three. No, actually, let's go back to number one. At number one, we have prime, right? This is the highest grade of meat that there is. All right. There's really what all of this means is how much fat is in the meat. And the more fat in the meat, the meat is considered better and more tasty. So here with prime, we have the greatest fat content, the greatest marbling. So these cuts of meat usually come from very young cattle. They're usually very well fed. This is the kind of meat you'll find in steakhouses and hotels, and it's very expensive. Um, and in the United States, around 4 to 5% of the cattle are raised this way to have this kind of fat content and this kind of flavor in the meat. So around 4 to 5 cattle are raised. 4 to 5% of the cattle are raised to be prime. And this is where you get your very expensive cuts of meat. And that's why they're very expensive, because they're more rare. They take more money to raise. Their feed is of higher quality, and it's more expensive to raise them. So therefore, it's more expensive to buy them and eat them. So that's USDA prime. In the middle here, we have choice. Also sounds really good, but doesn't really give us a good idea of what that means. So about 65% of the cattle in the United States that are raised to be choice cuts. Um, Here you'll get like a moderate fat marbling compared to the prime. You can cook these in a lot of different ways. You can roast them, grill them, fry them. They're a lot more economical, a lot cheaper than the prime cuts. And this is mostly what Americans eat at home when they buy steaks. and beef from the grocery store. This is the grade that they're usually buying. Select, number 3. We have here the last one. It doesn't have very much fat in it at all, and it's called Select. Again, not very informative. Doesn't tell us very much about anything. And I've always been confused about these Prime Choice and Select labels until I studied it, and I want to bring that to you now. So, the select beef is the least expensive. About 25% of cows in the United States are raised to have the select label. There's a very low fat content. It's the cheapest. It's the most available. Uh, it's easy to find. But again, it's not going to be as flavorful as your prime cuts. So one of the things about select meat is you got to learn how to cook it, and we go over cooking in pillar 3, right? But you would use methods of cooking like braising, where you cook in a liquid, or stewing it, where you can make a beautiful stew with a sauce that will kind of soften it up and give it a little bit more flavor, and a little make it a little bit less tough. So that's what you're looking at. Not saying one's better than the other. It really depends on what you're doing. If you're at a fancy, expensive restaurant, you can expect most of the time a prime cut. If you're just at the grocery store, most of the time you're going to be choosing choice. And the select is okay. It passes all the standards, but it's going to be the kind of meat that you'd want to use maybe in a stew or a braise or something like that. So just like we learned with eggs and chickens and labeling, and just like we learned for fish with wild caught and versus farmed fish, this is just your first glimpse into the different kinds of labeling that you're going to see at the store in terms of meat if you buy your meat from a store. Um, any other types of industrial farming, industrial ranching, industrial fisheries? We talk about those more in some of the other lessons, but for now, I just wanted you to have an overview of all 3 of these types of uh, places where your food can come from. Again, if we go back and get an idea of where we are and what we're learning where our food comes from. Lots and lots and lots of lessons in nature, and that it comes from nature and from the wild. Next, it comes from farming, whether that's farming at your own house or local farming in the area that you live in. And then finally, we're in these large industrial farms, ranches, fisheries, and this is called big food. So here's a little bit of an overview. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we will see you in the next lessons.